What's up guys, Kyle here again, and today we're gonna check out the VHT Pittbull 100 Classic. Let's do it. Alright, hope you guys are doing great out there. Today, I have the pleasure of checking out this Pittbull 100 Classic from VHT, or now Fryette Amplification. First off, I have to thank my man Joe Balaguer for selling this amp to me. After I convinced him to buy a Splon Nitro, he had to let go of something, so naturally, I would pick up whatever he was selling. So, this is the VHT Pittbull 100 Classic with the graphic EQ. Now, I actually already have a Pittbull Classic 50 with no EQ. The first Pittbull I ever owned was the 100 model with the graphic EQ, and my friend Travis from Eternal Sleep saw a picture of it when I posted that I had bought it, and he immediately hit me up and he's like, dude, I need to have that amp. He wanted it so bad, and even though I was in love with it, I was like, all right, man, like if you want it that bad, we'll work something out. So we ended up working out a deal, and I literally got rid of the amp like less than a week after I got it. Immediately regretted it. Found my 50 CL online like a week later for a great price. I've been happy with it ever since because I honestly disengaged the graphic EQ on it because I liked it better without the EQ engaged. I was just tweaking it too much, and I found that I was able to get it a really good tone exactly as I wanted easily without even having to use the graphic EQ. A lot of people on the interweb or the forums will tell you that if you're gonna get a Pittbull, you have to get the graphic EQ one. You absolutely have to. The other ones don't even come close. Blah, 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 blah. Not true at all. I totally understand why you would want the graphic EQ on there. It's a nice feature to have, especially if you're somebody who likes to dial in a lot of different tones. However, myself, I have the Classic 50, and it sounds amazing. I can dial in awesome tones on both the green and red channel, and I find myself never ever missing that graphic EQ. So, again, it's a nice feature, but it's not a must-have if you come across one that doesn't have the EQ on it. But this one does, and I really wanted to play with it since it had been so long since I had the EQ models. So that demo that you guys just heard was the amp boosted with the Deadweald Duality DX as usual. On the green channel is definitely lower gain. It's more open. The red channel is more saturated. It's a little bit more modern. Each channel has these switches. There's an EQ switch, an edge switch, which kind of adds a little bit top-end sizzle and high-end frequencies, and then the boost switch, which actually does add some internal boost into the circuit. You've got your graphic EQ over here, your master volume. This can also be run at half power. I was running it in full power. And then over here for the red channel, you have all the same switches. Each channel has a normal and a high gain switch. We're gonna run both channels on high gain here because we're not stupid little weak idiots and we play high gain riffs. Also, there are some controls on the back that I'm not gonna be able to show you, but there is a presence and a depth on the back, as well as some power amp options. There's an enhance and a normal option. It's in the normal option right now. There's also a button to remove the EQ from the circuit, which I currently have that button engaged. So even though you see the EQ has some settings dialed in, it's not actually active in the circuit. So I'll click that on and show you guys how much of a difference the EQ can make, because it can make a huge difference. So we're gonna go ahead, put this channel back to noon. I'm not even gonna bother with the low gain stuff. Like I said, I just don't care, and I don't think that you guys do either. And we're gonna kick it on. So everything's at noon on the front here. Presence and depth are now at noon, and let's see how that sounds. All right, so it's just barely saturated. Let's turn the gain up to noon. All right, let's turn it up to 3 o'clock. Okay, so let's get some mids and highs on that because it's sounding a little bit fluffy right now. Awesome. So we're going to turn the gain up even more. We're going to turn the bass down because it's getting a little bit flubby. So one thing I've noticed about both of the Pittbulls that I currently have, when you get the gain past a certain point, it doesn't really enhance the saturation of the amp. It just seems to add compression and darken things up a little bit. So we're gonna actually pull this back to right here. We're gonna kick in the onboard boost. All right, so I'll bump it up a little bit. As you can tell, it's not really any more saturated and all the way. It's tiny bit of saturation, but it's mostly compression that it's adding. So I like it right there because it's a little bit more open. We're gonna kick in the edge, which will add a little bit of top end sizzle, maybe a little bit more saturation. Now, the VHTs are known for two things. One, being stiff and a little bit hard to play, and two, clarity. You can tell both of those things right off the bat. These amps are insanely clear and they're very unforgiving. So if you suck like myself, you're gonna have a bad time trying to play this amp if you've got a sloppy right hand. Now, the reason for the dryness and the stiffness is because the amp lends itself to dynamics, and it also is very good at rolling the volume off and getting a completely different tone. Like, you can clean it up very easily. Okay, that's with the volume rolled back. Here it is with it up. It also responds a lot to your playing and how hard you're picking. So, a lot more saturation when you're punching the strings harder, whereas something like a 5150 will basically be saturated no matter how hard you hit the strings. All right, so anyways, let's kick in the shift button. On this channel, it seems to kick some more mids into the signal and tighten things up a little bit. But on the red channel, you'll see it seems to actually scoop some of the mids out and make the tone a little bit more modern. All right, so let's pull the lows back a little bit more and we'll actually add some presence and some depth. So that is the amp with no boost in front of it. It is very tight. Yeah, there's a built-in boost, but as you can tell, that really just adds saturation. It doesn't tighten the signal up. So it doesn't make a huge difference. We're actually gonna leave it off. We're gonna kick an outboard boost on. All right, so immediately we're nice and saturated. We need a little bit more low end. And we can dial back some treble because it's a little bright. All right, treble back, mids back a little bit. Let's add a little bit more presence. A lot of low end, but it's very punchy. All right, so let's actually scoop some mids out a little bit. awesome. Let's add a little treble. It just sounds so good no matter how you set it. It's really hard to make this thing sound bad. I love it. Real quick, let's engage the EQ and I'll show you how big of a difference that makes. Huge difference right off the bat, right? So let's actually turn the volume up. Wow. Yeah, that's a massive difference. Let's bring the mids up just a tad and that high end down just a tad. And we'll bump the 2.5K. Tons of low end with the mid scooped out. Let's actually put everything in the mid section. We shouldn't be able to tell a difference taking it out of the signal. Yeah, they sound identical, but once you start messing around with these sliders a little bit, we can actually, let's pull the mids out on the mid knob and then add some in on the sliders. That's actually very Marshall-y in the way that it kind of wants to cut your head off. Woo! That's a little bright. Let's pull the treble back. Graphic EQ makes a massive difference. I'm not going to play with that too much. We're just going to leave it at noon. And we are going to go over to the red channel now, actually. I'm going to put everything back at noon. I'm going to disengage all switches. I'm going to disengage. There's really nothing like playing a VHT. They're just so stiff. They have such a clarity to them. They have such a unique voicing that you really can never get a feel for one until you actually play it. All right, so now we're on the red channel. Everything is at noon. And the gain is at 9 o'clock. All right, let's bump that up to noon. All right, let's bump it up to 3 o'clock. Let's get some mids and highs again, because that seemed to be what was lacking on the green channel. Even with the gain that high, it's still a fairly dry sounding amp. Presence is up now. We're actually getting a ton of low end, so let's dial the low end back. All right, very Marshall-esque voicing, but it's like the highs are rolled off a little bit and some of the high mids are not quite there. Let's kick the shift in. Seems to add a lot of brightness and a little bit of low mid emphasis. All right, so let's kick the edge on. Roll the treble back a little bit. it's just so dry without a boost in front. As you can tell, the boost adds a little bit of saturation, a little bit of, it just seems to add some lows and low mids to the signal. So let's dial the gain back. Let's kick a boost on. All right, so yeah, it is. It's definitely more compressed. There's not as many highs coming through. We're gonna kick off the edge and the shift. Add some highs and some mids. All right, so it's a little bit bright. Let's add a little bit more bass. Let's pull back the treble a tad. And we're a little dry now that we have some of those switches out. Let's turn up the gain on the actual channel. Oh, it's dry, but man, the tones are good for sure. Let's kick the edge on. That seems to add some nice edge to the saturation. It gives it a little bit more fizziness, which I kind of like. Let's dial the depth up and the presence up a little bit more. Really, really good. Let's pull some mids out. I love this amp, but I always like the green channel better. We're gonna get a drop C guitar because you guys are yelling at me for not doing drop C demos anymore. GPS signal lost. My GPS signal's lost. Okay, drop C, ready to go? Well, that sounds beefy. Let's do a little bit more highs, a little bit less mid. Oh, so much balls. It sounds so mean. All right, that's gonna do it for me today on the Pittbull 100CL. I barely use the graphic EQ, but I just find it so touchy. I can get everything that I want out of this amp using the EQ controls on here themselves. Boost out front, it sounds incredible, extremely tight, extremely punchy, tons of clarity. It's just an awesome, mean-sounding amp that stands the test of time. This amp was designed over 30 years ago and it still sounds amazing today. You would never guess that this thing was in the same time frame as like the late JCM 800s. It just sounds so modern and so mean. So yeah, such an awesome amp. I really hope that you guys found this helpful. If you like this video, please hit the like button on the way out. Consider subscribing because I would hate for you guys to miss the next one. I love having you here. Thanks for stopping by. Kyle here again. We'll see you guys next time.